KOTOR has been one of, if not my favorite Star Wars series. From its insanely well thought out dialogue and story, to the fun nature of playing the game, these entries have been a staple for many Star Wars fans. In the past, I went through blasters and then melee only on each game. Those were awesome but challenging runs to complete. Today I will be asking a different question. Is it possible to beat these games with force powers only? Well, before we dive into the video, let me explain the rules for the run. Starting off, I'm only allowed to use force powers. There are various powers the player and his allies can use. From lightning to force siphon, we'll have numerous options at our disposal. This will be interesting to try. The blasters and melee only runs, limiting ourselves to just those weapons, hindered us against groups of enemies, while we excelled at 1v3 or 2v3 combat. This run, it seems, will be the opposite. Groups of enemies on paper should be easier to deal with, but we may have trouble against bosses or stronger opponents that are force power resistant. Because force powers are the only things that can be used, all grenades, blasters, and melee weapons are not allowed. There is one exception, which is in certain scenarios, this, aka not using any weapons, is fine. Some situations force the player to use specific party members, and so we are going to have to combat that. No implants, visors, gauntlets, shields, and belt modifiers are allowed. This will make things much more difficult for our party members. The game will be played on the difficult difficulty, which is equivalent to hard mode in other games. The difficulty cannot be changed at any time during the run. These are some of the many ways this difficulty impacts KOTOR. Damage received is increased, enemies have more health, and so on. Pretty much just the basic things you'd expect. But if you are interested, I'll link this post down below that explains things in detail. Next, we must beat the game. The KOTOR games have many planets and things to do on each one, so we will have to conquer each challenge as we go. Lastly, glitches and/or exploits are allowed, so expect some cheeky ways to take down bosses and get around areas. The KOTOR series are such awesome games, so I'm very excited to share this next round of challenge runs with everyone. More than a few years ago now, I played these games for the first time and was instantly immersed in these worlds and time periods within Star Wars. Because of this, I want to give you the opportunity to experience it for yourselves, so in these videos I will usually showcase the challenge alongside the story. This is for those who may be unfamiliar to the game, and also to enhance the video. Blasters and melee only challenge runs were chaotic, so it'll be interesting to see how force powers only will suffice. If you haven't seen the previous challenges, I would highly recommend watching them after this video. Link them up above and down below. Make sure to smash the like button, comment, and subscribe to help support me and the channel. Now, let's jump into force powers only. Before starting the run, I chose my class, allocated levels, and selected a feat to unlock. For this run, as we were doing force powers only, strength and dexterity will not be useful in this playthrough, compared to blasters and melee only, where those were necessary to level up. Instead, the bottom four categories, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma, will be leveled. Intelligence and wisdom will be the ones I will allocate the most towards. When the intelligence stat is increased, it will let the player and his allies modify the number of points a character can spend on skills. aka the higher the level, the more skills we can unlock. Wisdom increases FP, and makes it harder for enemies to resist force powers. Upgrading this particular stat is needed for Dark Jedi and late game enemies. For now though, I made sure Constitution was a high enough level at the start, as this increases our character's health gained at each level up. Next were the various skills. I upgraded Awareness, Persuasion, and Treating Injury. Awareness, as this helps against cloaked enemies. Persuasion, in case I need to convince an NPC about something. This goes actually great with force powers only run, which I'll talk about later. And finally, Treating Injury. The Treating Injury skill will realistically only be useful for the Andor Spire and Terrace, as it only affects med packs and not force heal. But I digress. Ultimately, once I felt confident on the allocated levels and skills spent, I finalized my selection. Waking up on the Andor Spire, Trask lets us know the situation. We are under attack from the Sith and need to act immediately. This section always gets me to chuckle a bit, since Trask is the tutorial for the player. So yeah, he will start talking about button suppress, which can take you out of the immersion for a bit, but nonetheless, it is funny how these games used to do that. Now I should probably talk about the elephant in the room, as we progress off the Andor Spire and towards Terrace. For those who have played this game before, know what I am soon going to say. The force powers only run, you'd expect me to select a Jedi at the start, right? Well, there is no option at the start for a Jedi or Force user. There is a reason for this story-wise, but I don't want to spoil that for those who haven't seen or played these games before. Ultimately, the player doesn't unlock Force powers in KOTOR 1 until the start of Dantooine, compared to KOTOR 2, which lets the player immediately unlock Force powers. That game, it's also story-related, so you can't really argue with that. Because of the aforementioned things, the run won't start until after we arrive on Dantooine. but I think it's still worth mentioning the story. Technically, the run is over as we are unable to take down enemies on the Andor Spire and on the surface of Terrace, force powers only. In the end, we will continue. These two locations where you can't use force powers are actually quite quick in the grand scheme of KOTOR 1's story, so it'll be interesting to see how the rest of the game fares. Sooner or later, we reach Terrace after taking an escape pod. Rip my boy Trask for giving his life. We have a dream with a Sith and a Jedi attacking each other. When was this? What was the outcome? All will be revealed in time. This is when Karth Onasi, a highly regarded Republic soldier, explains the situation. Terrace is a Sith-occupied world, and at the moment, all transports have been halted as a planet-wide quarantine is in effect. Then he mentions Bastila, a Jedi who is on board the Andor Spire. Karth thinks that she was able to make it to one of the escape pods, states we need to rescue her immediately. Before leaving, Karth warns us not to get caught by the Sith, as he has heard the dark stories of them using the Force on people's minds, causing some to be crushed and others to wipe away their memories. Needless to say, getting caught will be the last thing we will do. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this first planet we go to, the player is unable to use Force powers. Because of this, I'll be skipping / glossing over the non-story related things. If you're interested in these early sections and what the player is able to do, check out the past blasters and melee only runs. Each of those challenge runs I played things differently, as one was light-sided and the other was dark-sided. This is probably a good time to talk about KOTOR's gameplay, how it plays out generally, and the impacts of those choices. I want to explain this for those who are unfamiliar with the series. Essentially, the player is able to walk around and explore each planet. NPCs can be spoken with, most will talk about, just random information, and others are tied to quests. Whether it's a minor side quest to a major plot relevant quest, each decision will yield the player light or dark-sided points. Every action in the game has a cause and effect relationship, so my actions are important in deciding the fate of a run. Why is it worthwhile to do a light or dark-sided actions? It could be to roleplay as either a Jedi or a Sith, but for me, it's at least to get mastery of one side, greatly boosting one stat for that character. In the previous melee only run, went through and was as evil and dark-sided as possible, which was really fun. This time I want to be light-sided, though there were times where things weren't so straightforward. Players able to speak with merchants to buy items, a guild member to drop off various bounty pucks, a fighting arena? Yeah, this was really cool, but was just located on Terrace, not any of the other planets. Then we get to the combat scenarios. KOTOR is a turn-based system, with one side performing one action, then the other side acts, rinse and repeat. The action bar in the bottom left lets the player use what's in their inventory, what they've learned through the Force. As we don't have any unlocked, none will appear there yet. Lastly, the player is able to select up to 2 party members to help out during a playthrough. Besides in combat and/or if within an enemy's territory, the player can swap out party members on the fly. These were just some of the basics explained in a KOTOR playthrough. Now I'll explain more throughout the video. Ultimately, we befriend Mission Veo and Zalbar, rescue Bastila Shan after winning the swoop races, the antiquated version of pod racing, as these games take place years before the prequel trilogy. See the main bad guy of the game, aka Darth Malak, then leaving aboard the Ebon Hawk, after the mercenary and Mandalorian Andor's Ordo offers us a deal to escape the Sith. Thankfully we did because Malak nuked the entire planet. Bastila notices that we are Force sensitive and we speak about having Force visions and recommends we travel to Dantooine, home to one of the many Jedi enclaves. While this section I would have liked to talk about acquiring and using Force powers, it is in the upcoming Dantooine area. Thankfully, this gave me the chance to explain some of the basics regarding gameplay and the story. Once again, if you are interested in this initial area, whether it's story or gameplay related, check out the blaster and melee only videos. Now, let's start the actual run. Dantooine is our next stop. We came here because Bastila recommended us to visit the Jedi Council regarding our shared visions. Initially, I visited a merchant and sold the useless items, from melee weapons to grenades and so on. Basically whatever wasn't armor or a med pack. Eventually we come face to face with the council. They speak regarding this rather special case. The members feel that we are strong in the Force and consider us for Jedi training. As our main character is an adult, they are a bit skeptical, but since we are a special case, they will make an exception. Then the council sends us away as they decide on their decision. This is when we get another strange vision, but this is way in the past, before Malak and Revan turned to the dark side. Clearly, whatever they were searching for seduced them. The next day we go before the council once again, sharing this new vision we both shared. One of the member speaks about powerful force connections forming between two people, and that may be what's occurring. Essentially, Bastila and our main character are linked. Then we begin the training, which is a really cool sequence of the main character practicing battle forms and reading up on the Jedi lore. Even though this game is over 20 plus years of age, the cutscenes still slap so hard in my opinion. Masters are impressed. Because of this, we are now able to complete the first test, reciting the Jedi Code. The core tenets of the Jedi must be memorized. There is no emotion. There is peace. There is no ignorance. There is knowledge. There is no passion. There is serenity. There is no chaos. There is harmony. There is no death. There is the Force. I think for myself, this is one of the many reasons why I really enjoyed this first game a lot, more so than the second. Not to say I dislike or hate the second game, I similarly really enjoy it, as it definitely improved the combat, such as lightsaber techniques, better force abilities, and so on. I always just thought the first game immersed the player into the world of Star Wars on a much better level. Whether it was reciting the Jedi or Sith tenets, it was really awesome to complete on each playthrough. With our training nearly complete, we now must see what this dark taint is within the grotto. This is our third and final test. By now we have a lightsaber and force abilities. This is a force powers only run. I'll be selling the lightsaber very shortly. I don't think the council will be very happy about this one. I was able to select two options for force powers, and so I upgraded shock into force lightning. This is definitely one of the better abilities in my opinion, as it shreds groups of enemies. Now one of the downsides of doing this challenge run in the first game compared to the second, that regenerating force points takes a lot of time. The player has to be out of combat. I think you can already see some of the challenges in this playthrough. That's not even mentioning the low FP points that we have right now, meaning at most I can cast force lightning 2 to 3 times. There are numerous NPCs to speak to outside the Jedi Enclave. Most of these are along the main progression path or slightly off on a side path. So afterwards we will receive a large amount of money and XP. As we explore the Kunda Plains, it's probably a good point to get into some of the more detailed gameplay, especially regarding force abilities. Some of you may have noticed that I generally will heal from the menu rather than the action menu. Why is this? Well, it's to skip the animation of healing and instantly get healed. In the later sections of this game, when enemies hit hard, it's really useful to menu heal to avoid the animation and damage enemies while that's going on. FP is going to be the most important aspect of this run. Because of that, we will need to increase it as much as possible. This can be mostly done just by leveling up. Enemies can be force resistant or even completely immune. When that happens, it generally means that I was rolling a lower number and they had high force resistant stats. When this occurs, I will have to hope that buffing up our main character and our allies will suffice. That's another thing, is that there are 3 types of force powers: buffs, damaging, and debuffing abilities. Buffs are typically things like increased defense, battle meditation, and so on. I'd lump force heal in there as well. Damaging abilities are ones such as, siphon, lightning, and push. Debuffs are fun to use in a run, especially ones like insanity. Each ability has their own optimal usage, so careful leveling up is necessary for success. Using no implants, visors, gauntlets, shields, and belt modifiers is going to be hindering, as we ultimately are resisting less and less as the game goes on. Fortunately, armor has been decent so far. Oh, but what's that? You can't use most armor while casting force powers? Well, we are going to be dealt massive damage. Yeah, certain armor sets, mostly the non-Jedi or Sith robes, will not let the player or allies cast force abilities. Another obstacle to overcome, but we got this. I'm confident. Eventually we reach the grotto, where the supposed dark taint is. As our main character approaches some ruins, Juhani, a fallen Jedi, attacks us without question.
I have been waiting for you.
Using some of those years of COD Zombies training techniques help to get some damage in and let FP regen. We are able to defeat her, and through a series of dialogue interactions, convince her to reject her dark-sided ways. Because of our actions, she returns to the Enclave. I'm sure some of you are wondering why I was soloing her. Bastila is stuck at the Enclave, so I could have Karth or someone else, but I'm only going to be using Jedi and following the rules from Dantooine onwards, as on the Andor Spire and Terrace we had to use normal weaponry. I try as often to follow the rules as much as possible, meaning taking the extra step to ensure that things like this stay in line with the rules. Speaking with the council, we are congratulated with returning Juhani and are granted the rank of Padawan.
Yahoo!
The Council now trusts that we are able to find out what Revan and Malak were so eager to learn from the ruins here, so Bastila and our main character are dispatched to find answers. Shortly after Bastila and I ventured through the Kunda Plains, I noticed a big problem that would occur throughout the run. FP I mentioned being tough at this point, since our characters aren't that high level. The FP amount is tied to the player's level. Well, after using all of our FP, Bastila just decided to try punching her way out of things. Clearly this is going to be an issue. Fortunately, in this scenario, I was able to run away and then have her respawn, but I will have to be conscious of this going forward. Entering the ruins, Bastila and our main character eventually come across a droid. It takes a while for the droid to cycle through various languages until we are able to converse. The droid reveals that slaves built this temple many years ago. They were commanded to build this temple by the Rakatan invaders, who conquered many planets and had a vast empire. Since the completion of the temple, this droid has been waiting for a builder to return in case they needed knowledge on the Starforge. That doesn't seem like long, but then...
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, it's revealed that this droid is thousands of years old. Bastila is astonished by this revelation. Eventually, we are able to explore. There are 2 side paths that have a console with a puzzle inside. When completed, this lets the player enter the final temple door. I end up using this exploit that lets the player and his allies continually respawn when a console or jump location is interacted with. This lets me get some quick force lightning strikes before retreating away. As this is going on, I have to say that I really enjoyed the various Rakatan Easter eggs within Andor. Their empire and history were massive. It was cool to see callbacks to that time period. Whether it was a ceremonial dagger, that large statue Luthen returned to Chandrila in Season 2. Awesome to have included. Then there's Starkiller's armor and Plo Koon's mask. Gosh, I really enjoyed those series and all of its Easter eggs. Sad that we may never get another series like that again, but I'm glad with the Andor we already have. Sooner or later, we come across the Star Map fragment, the thing that Revan and Malak saw not long ago. Bastila believes this to be a map, showing where the actual Starforge is located. What is the Starforge? Well, at this point, our main character and allies don't know the danger that is looming upon them. And, it's best not to spoil that reveal until it actually happens. In the end, we discover that this is only a piece of a map, and that other locations have been marked. Orban, Kashyyyk, Tatooine, and Manan may have further answers to our many questions. With this information, we leave the ruins to relay it to the Council. Before entering the Enclave, our main character feels that Bastila wishes to say something, and so we converse. This is one of the many interactions regarding the player's party. Each ally has an interesting series of dialogue, alongside some quests associated with them. In this case, Bastila asks our main character questions to gauge how truthful we are. Do we try to deceive and be dark-sided, or honest and light-sided? I'd highly recommend you check out the VODs channel to see challenges like this and others. Here, I post the full streams of the challenges I complete, whether it's Sekiro No Deaths, to KOTOR 2 Blasters Only, and find it all there. Thank you for all your support. Now let's speak with the Council. When the Council learned of the information, they ultimately told us to fight the coming darkness, Malak, the Starforge, and whatever else may come our way. Because we rescued Juhani instead of defeating her, the Council thinks it's wise for her to join us, hoping that we can truly show her the path of good. We accept their request, and so now we must find out more about the Starforge. The last few things I did on Dantooine were finishing the remaining side quests, alongside farming to get some more XP. Found even with having a third party member, that would often have to wait before each encounter. FP regen in this game is just really slow. That's one thing that I praised the second game for fixing. So I'll be talking a lot about that in the upcoming KOTOR 2 video. It was fun but chaotic time, especially against the Mandalorians. Thankfully, Force Lightning did the trick. Oh, Kashyyyk, tie-towering trees to its cool walkways. I really enjoy coming here. Following Dantooine, I thought it best to visit this place afterwards. The player is able to find Jolee, an old Jedi, who has high FP at base and will come really handy throughout the run. That is one unfortunate thing about a Force Powers only run in KOTOR. Most of the character roster is out the window since they are unable to wield the Force. Thankfully, this changes in KOTOR 2, which is another thing that I have to praise that game for, as in most, if not all gameplay facets, things were enhanced. But man, I wish they didn't rush the story in that game. As we speak with our party members and locals, let's talk about the run so far, plans for late game, and so on. This run so far has been an interesting one. It became evident at the start that Force Powers only could not be achieved during the Endar Spire and Terra sequences. While that was unfortunate, I did know from playing this game beforehand that this would occur, so I was interested to see how we would do once we acquired Force Powers on Dantooine. Since then, using only Force Powers has been really hindering. While Force Lightning deals a lot lot of damage to groups of enemies, the FP cost is high, so I'm often left with nothing to attack them with. Thankfully, there are a few ways besides leveling up to increase the player's FP, but at the moment we just don't have those options available. Because we are low to mid level, we're just starting to get some great force powers for our main character and allies, both damaging and buff related. While Insanity and the debuff force abilities are good, generally better to go with damage. Very soon we are going to start seeing Dark Jedi, enemies that are force resistant, so my goal for the endgame and remainder of the run is to make our force abilities as potent as possible, whether that's buffing myself or debuffing enemies to make them weak to force powers. Both will be needed for Malik, who is a god in the ring. Next is that some of you may be wondering, why is the aspect ratio so weird for this game? That's because I'm playing on the Xbox One, emulating the original Xbox version, so it causes the aspect ratio to not fill the edge of the screen. Personally, I always enjoyed playing these games as closely to how they should be played, rather than modding them like crazy for enhanced graphics and so on. That is why I love playing Most Wanted on the 360. That piss yellow filter and game as a whole is just perfection. Then we get the save states. This game does have an autosave mechanic, but I find it to be far and few, and often at random, unimportant times. Because these games have a tendency to freeze, I like to save often, especially with force abilities. This tends to cause the frames to drop often. Using no modifiers besides armor has been challenging to say the least. We are dealt more damage and deal less. Combine that with the difficulty, and yeah, things have been challenging. Plenty of the game to go, that means things will only become tougher as we progress. Once we get near the end of the video, I'll talk about this again, analyzing the run as a whole. But it's nice to take a few minutes to talk about the run so far.
Have mercy. Please, please.
There is no mercy.
Further along the walkway, the player can find 3 Dark Jedi, instructed to hunt the player and Bastila down after the events of Terrace. Our party members wipe the floor with them, which really surprised me. I thought that they would have had slightly higher force resistant stats or buffs to reduce damage. Nonetheless, I am happy to get past them. Because we had rescued Zalbar on Terrace and brought him with us to Kashyyyk, some of the local Wookiees noticed him, which forced us to be taken captive. Why, you might ask? Well, apparently he's exiled for being a Mad Claw.
Lies! Deceptions!
Which we obviously know not to be true. He was set up to look like the bad guy, taking the fall when his brother was really the menace. For now, he holds Zalbar hostage, while we must deal with another Mad Claw within the lowest levels of Kashyyyk's surface. Right as we get off the elevator on the surface, Hallow Nord, a bounty hunter that tried to stop us from acquiring the Ebon Hawk, shows his face once again, this time being his last. Think out of all the areas and enemies we've faced thus far, this definitely pushed our allies to their limits. Hallow and his Wookiee warriors have insane health, so I had to slowly whittle them down bit by bit. One really cool thing that you are able to do is if you're interested in the background numbers, you can read a transcript of your most recent battle, relaying what exactly took place. I ended up finding this new exploit that I never realized, to be honest, is more so funny rather than actually useful, since this certain situation is really specific. Essentially, if the player speaks with the person operating this elevator, this will stop combat for everyone but your 2 party members. Because of this, you can just see Bastila and Juhani wailing on them in the background. So let me regen FP, as our main character wasn't in combat, so I could help out afterwards. One unfortunate thing is that once a character runs out of FP, they just start wailing on them with their fists. At least fists deal insanely low damage, but I think it's okay not to count these events against the run. Subsequently, I found Jolee Bindo. Compared to Bastila and Juhani, Jolee has a much higher FP pool. He's great for casting numerous force abilities in a row. Juhani is solid, but is more so a tank rather than a powerhouse force wielder. Besides Jolee's quest, there were a few other minor objectives, such as finding out what happened to one of the merchant's associates, who ultimately got double-crossed. Then there was finding information on a Wookiee who was soon to stand trial. This newfound data would exonerate him the cost of shaming a recently deceased Wookiee.
Kill him. Kill him now. Do it.
Yeah, I don't think Jolee will be too happy about that one, since he was hoping for a peaceful solution. In the end, we befriended Jolee, got past the shield barrier, defeated Mandalorians, located Zalbar's father, aka the Mad Claw Chundar wanted us to take down, defeated the Ritual Beast, finally, the next star map fragment. And of all the star map fragments, this is one of the most unique ones. For each star map fragment, there is usually a tough boss or labyrinth to conquer. In this case, it's just answering the questions correctly.
Run.
With our plan in motion to overthrow Freyr's son Chundar, we head back to the Wookiee encampment. Freyr, Zalbar, many of the other Wookiees are tired of Zerka Corporation's control, but Chundar has silenced many of those who speak against him. Because of this, the slow building fire of revolution finally took shape. Choosing to side with Zalbar, we'll have the main character and his allies defeat Chundar, his Wookiee warriors, and Zerka Corporation. By this point in the run, all of our party members have gotten a much needed boost to their force ability lineups. Life Drain I found to be a decent one for single opponents. It drains their life to whichever character wields it. Force Defense, Force Sensitivity, many of the other buff force powers I started to give Bastila and Jolie. We are now on the cusp where things are going to be a lot simpler with us having more FP. At the same time, more challenging since enemies have more HP and deal increased damage. Eventually we are able to defeat Chundar, ending his reign of terror. Freyr, Zalbar's father, offers to give him the Blade of Baka, a holy weapon of the Wookiee culture. Zalbar humbly accepts. Little does he know that we are going to be selling it for a hefty chunk of change. Last thing we do on Kashyyyk is push the Zerka Corporation out of the sector once and for all. With Wookiee support, we slowly inch our way back to the Ebon Hawk. It was a fun but hectic battle, and in the end, the Wookiees thank us for all we have done. Because we had found the star map fragment on Kashyyyk, I thought it best to go towards Tatooine next. This area I find to be difficult, so it's nice to have a few levels already under our belts. Having a high persuasion stat alongside a few force abilities will let the player force persuade in certain scenarios. This example, we didn't have to pay the docking fee, which is a small amount, but each planet has one, so it does help out a lot in the end. KOTOR is such an awesome game, but as you might have already noticed, there's a lot that I have to cut out since otherwise this video would be hours and hours long. If you're interested in checking out this challenge and others I post, head over to the Voz channel, or maybe you would like to catch one of my streams live. On Twitch, I stream regularly, recently have completed some exciting challenges that I'm hyped to share soon. Thank you guys for being such an awesome and supportive community. Now, let's get back to the run. Swoop races are great to complete in any playthrough. They're some of my favorite mini games to complete in both of the KOTOR games, and actually are worthwhile. Most will give the player a large amount of credits and XP as a reward for each stage completed, but especially when the player becomes champion. Tatooine's track layout, I would say it's like mid-tiered in difficulty, then you get to Manon. Yeah, don't get me started on that one. One quick thing that I want to talk about is from a point I mentioned earlier. This is Bastila's mother. Part of her questline, when she is spoken to enough, the player brings her in their party. Each character has dialogue sequences broken up between the planets. Some have quests. Bastila finds out that her father has passed away. Between her parents, she always loved her father more, so is devastated by this news. Ultimately, it's revealed that he passed away on Tatooine and had a holocron with him, whom her mother wishes to be returned. Bastila questions her intentions. Does she want it only to sell, or for comfort and remembrance? This quest foreshadows much of the later game, also how Bastila is quite unhinged, struggling with emotions. Before heading out of Anchorhead, I visited a local shop and purchased HK-47, last character the player can get in the roster. Since he is a droid, he is useless in this run, but is one hilarious addition to the team. Even though I like K2SO from Rogue One/Andor, HK-47 is just S++. Then we get outside the town.
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
Numerous Tusken warriors aimed for our demise. Whether it was an ambush or a large assault, their sheer determination was terrifying. One of the more interesting and strange things about this game is that a lot of force abilities are not tied to the light or dark side. Force lightning, for instance, is a neutral power, so it's fascinating to think of why light side users discontinued using it. I know Plo Koon has this like sick yellow lightning he wields. Like, man, I feel like many more should have that power. If I'm able to find it, a link to this funny reel I found, where Revan scolds the OT and prequel trilogy characters for not using Force Heal, Lightning, etc. It was an awesome series of skits. Afterwards, I went to the Tusken camp. Usually in my past playthroughs, I will take down all the enemies here, like Anakin did in episode 2. This time around, I want to try the more peaceful solution, since in this playthrough, I was trying to be as light-sided as possible. Though, you know, there were times where I had to give in and just obliterate people in my path. path. For this particular quest, the Zerka Corporation wants the player to defeat the chieftain, but instead we will have HK-47 translate for us. And yes, I did take down all of the enemies outside with Jolee and Bastila before switching to HK-47, as I did not want him to use his blaster at all. In the end, we were able to lessen the attacks on Anchorhead and passing convoys by giving the Tuskens some moisture vaporators. I returned to the town and bought a boatload of med packs. While it's nice to heal using Force Heal, it does take away from my offensive capabilities, so it's best to menu heal instead, at least from what I found. I'd be interested to know down below any tips or tricks that you've picked up on from these games, whether it's a niche exploit to a more practical one. Be curious to read through your comments. Once we defeat some Tuskens, bring the Bantha to a nearby cave, we were able to take down this Krayt Dragon with some help from a Twi'lek. Because of it now being safe to enter, we were able to find another star map fragment. Alongside the holocron, the Helena, Bastila's mother, requested we return. Back in the cantina, Bastila and her mother argue for a while, and our main character acts as a delegator between the two. I actually really enjoyed this questline. I believe I started it in my very first playthrough, but never returned the holocron back to her. Either way, it is an interesting series of conversations. Helena dying, Bastila feels that keeping it would be selfish, and in these last months that she has, wishes her mother to remember the good times. Because of this, she returns the holocron, and is happy that she can get some kind of peace regarding her family. Before leaving to head to the next planet, our main character feels Bastila wishing to speak with us, revealed that she has come to depend on us and our actions. She's extremely happy to have our main character as an ally. As we are heading towards Manon, the next location on our journey, we are able to see a cutscene between Darth Malak and Admiral Kareth. The failed bounty hunter attempt with Calo Nord was frustrating for Malak, but he knew that this would be no easy feat, as Bastila has quite the reputation. Sooner or later, he decides to use his apprentice to hunt us down, Darth Banton. For most of the early sections though, it's just a lot of dialogue, rather than fights. Take for instance this questline with Jolee, where the main character can be part of the Defendant's Council, an arbiter. In the previous round of KOTOR videos, a commenter mentioned doing this, and so I was actually really curious to try it out. The Arbiter questline, alongside many others, are able to be collected early on in the planet, though the player usually completes most of them near the end. From finding the missing Selkath, why the Republic has been hiring an increased number of people, there are many ways to collect credits and XP. Boot braces can be completed here, but as mentioned on Tatooine, has the hardest track out of all the planets. Being the Arbiter in the trial was the most tedious. NPCs had to be questioned all over the planet, so the truth could be found out. I guess I must have missed one piece of evidence because he was found guilty, even though I'd spoken with I thought everyone I needed to. Probably missed something for this, as it is my first time with this quest, so I'll have to attempt it again in the next challenge. Because we had agreed to help out the Republic Embassy, our party members venture inside the Sith base, hoping to recover the destroyed probe droid.
I'm hardly frightened by a thug with a gun.
So we blast these fools with Force Lightning over and over again. Very soon the final tier of Force Lightning can be obtained, aka Force Storm, which is insanely overpowered. Another addition that we will be getting shortly, the upgraded version of Life Drain, which deals more damage alongside siphoning more health to the player. I think that's one of the many reasons that KOTOR and its sequel has been such a staple within the Star Wars community. It's amazingly well thought out story, various attributes / playstyles, fun mini games, and so on, make them have a lot of replayability value. Since I've started doing challenges on these games, it's been awesome to read through your comments and experiences. Whether it was a funny moment or some long-lasting memory, it's been evident that these games have had a long-lasting impact on many people. The Sith base was definitely the toughest part of Manon as a whole, as there were multiple Dark Jedi, Sith troopers, and a tough boss fight at the end. By this point, our party members are decently leveled, so I didn't have to worry about running out of FP as often. This meant more damage and opportunities to debuff enemies or buff party members. This is the point where Force powers start to really shine, as our stats are getting to a more optimal point, alongside more variety of options to use, though Force Lightning was obviously the superior choice. Not using blasters and melee weapons has forced me to outwit my opponents in certain situations. One instance, I may be required to train them around while my FP regenerates, while in another, I buff up before an encounter if I know that enemy type might be resistant. Melee and blaster weapons don't require ammo, though some of the blasters you would expect that, but that's a conversation for another day. While every Force power has a cost. Once I had saved the Selkath youth from the clutches of the Sith. I then went back to the holding cells where I finished Sunri's quest. Acting as his arbiter, we went through the trial, arguing that the defendant was innocent. As I mentioned earlier though, I did, I guess, miss speaking with an NPC or two, since they ultimately found him guilty. It was a really cool quest line nonetheless. I don't think his wife will be saying the same thing. Returning the droid's memory bank to the Republic Embassy, they are thankful. Ask one last favor of us. The Republic has set up a secret mining facility, but recently something has made the Selkath down there go insane, turning on everyone. Mercenaries have been sent down there, but none have returned. So he pleads with us. He hints that the star map fragment she has never seen nor heard of before might be down there on the ocean's surface. As this is what Bastila and our main character saw in their vision, they accept the request. Because of that, we enter their submersible, descended through the eerie waters below. When I think of Manon's ocean surface and the Selkath going insane, it reminds me of one thing: the possibility of this game freezing. My very first KOTOR playthrough ever, I ended up crashing the game multiple times here. I guess that force lightning was indeed too powerful. Fortunately, we've had only like 2 to 3 crashes by this point in the playthrough. The saves weren't all that far off, so it wasn't all that bad. Still plenty of the game to go though, so maybe that will all change very soon. Eventually we come across this colossal Phyraxian shark, sort of leader to the smaller ones. With the Republic secretly mining for Kolto, a healing agent similar to Bacta, this has disrupted the natural order here. The sharks and other wildlife have felt threatened, so have tried to hinder the people, which in turn was making the Selkath go insane. They are able to interact with the mining equipment, either destroying it so that the wildlife can thrive once again, or we can release a toxic nerve agent destroying the sharks. But what would the repercussions be on the surrounding friendly creatures? Well, for this playthrough, since we are trying to be as light-sided as possible, one with destroying the equipment. The shark seems to let us pass the bridge. At the end, another star map fragment can be located. With 3 out of the 4 fragments collected, we are so close to completing this challenge. As our team is leaving the facility, Darth Bandon ambushes us with 2 Dark Jedi. This fight was crazy difficult. Bandon just put the work in on our party, mostly him causing our party members to go insane, or Force Whirlwind, where I am unable to do any actions. Needless to say, this was the most challenging fight we've come across thus far. I had to train him around the base to regen FP. This was alongside hoping that I could spawn Bastila and Jolie if he wasn't close to where they were defeated. I was genuinely surprised since in my past 3 playthroughs, I never had this much trouble with him, but it does make sense with him being highly force resistant and adept in all the Sith arts. In the end, we are able to defeat him, but this made me question, how are the later sections of this game gonna fare? Would we be able to take down all the enemies? Is FP going to be somehow more troublesome later? Well, only time will tell. For now, we found out what drove the Selkath insane, found the next star map fragment, defeated Malak's right-hand man. Our next destination is Korriban. Admiral Kareth had other plans for us. The Ebon Hawk and our allies are slowly being pulled in by a tractor beam. The team rallies together, hoping to have someone save everyone else's skin. I decide to go with Jolie rather than Juhani, as he has much higher FP, though at the cost of HP. We eventually are captured and interrogated by the Admiral himself, gloats to Karth about his weaknesses. But the two had a long past. Words sting Karth a bit more. He questions Basila's loyalty to the light, questions if our main character shares the same values. He would like to kill us here and now, but he wants to keep us alive for all the trouble we've caused Malak and the history between us. What the heck does that mean? Well, for a first playthrough, this is when the story and everything really starts to unravel, in an awesome way in my opinion. But I'll talk about this more once we get further. Then we get to play as Jolie, running around the Leviathan, hacking doors, defeating Sith troopers, rescuing our other party members. Bastila, Karth, and our main character realize that this is the time to strike at the Admiral once and for all, so we head to the bridge. Getting there was fairly challenging. There were at least 30 enemies in these areas, which was just crazy. Since we're at the endgame sections, damage dealt to our party members is quite high, especially since we aren't using, good armor with decent defense. That's one of the many things about a Force Powers only run that hinders the player, since non-Jedi and Sith robes don't allow the user to cast Force powers. Another aspect that made these sections more challenging was that party members can't be swapped out. These 3 characters are plot relevant for the upcoming events and have to be in the party, because this Karth is selected. Past playthroughs, he was useful, but not in this one. I guess he was getting some practice in for the upcoming Fist Only challenge that I'll be doing on Twitch. After some time, we come face to face with Admiral Kareth on the bridge. This fight proved a fatal flaw regarding Force Powers Only run, which is that when enemies are abundant, one single room is forced on the player, FP regeneration is not possible. Thus, force powers could not be used after the first volley. I ended up retrying the section more than a few times just to see if maybe, just maybe, I could get it to work, but everything was against our party members. No jump locations can be interacted with. These generally will force the player out of combat where FP regeneration is possible. As none can be interacted with, that option was out the window. There was a console I could interact with, but this would just pause the game and wouldn't be helpful. Next was trying to find a corner where maybe the game would think I'm out of combat, but with just how many enemies there were, it was not possible. No matter what I did or tried, nothing was going to let me regenerate FP here. Because of the aforementioned things, this is the first true section of the run where force powers only could not be achieved. While the Andor Spire and Terrace we forgoed since we had yet to acquire force powers, this instance on the Leviathan has to be counted against the run. Technically the run is over, as we could not get past these enemies and Admiral Kareth as the situation made FP regeneration impossible. I cannot stress how many times I've tried finding a way through this fight. Like some of the past challenges on these games, certain sections force the player to use specific items. One example is that unless the player has Bowdur in their roster in the second game when rescuing the Queen of Andor, the player has to use a lightsaber to destroy the force field, otherwise they will be soft locked. For this specific game, one example would be the game making the player use a grenade for the Rancor. While you could defeat it by normal means, Rancor has insanely stacked stats that make it at least 20 plus minutes to take it down. You can't visit Terrace late game, so you have to take it down, very early on. These are just some of the many examples meant to help illustrate the situation. The right here and now wants us to maybe use force powers, but not as a main weapon. Nonetheless, we will push on. We still have much of the game to go. I'm very interested in how these last few sections will fare alongside Darth Malak. Once defeated and before passing away, the Admiral whispers something into Karth's ear, which sends him into a frenzy. He is furious with Bastila, the actions of the Council, but as we don't have time, with Malak immediately arriving, we hastily return to Thevin Hawk. Before we are able to escape the Leviathan, Darth Malak appears, blocking our way out. He taunts us, questioning why we chose the light side, Bastila's actions, and so on. This is the big reveal of the game, so I want to showcase this for those unfamiliar, as my words could not do enough justice for this interaction.
Down you and your companions. Besides, I had to see for myself if it was true. Even now, I can...
What? You mean you don't know?
All this time and you still haven't figured it out. I wonder how long you would have stayed blind to the truth. Surely some of what you once were must have surfaced by now. Even the combined power of the Jedi Council couldn't keep your true identity buried forever, could it?
The Jedi do not believe in killing their prisoners. No one deserves execution, no matter what their crimes.
The Council would not normally accept an adult for training, but this is a special case.
They say the Force can do terrible things to a mind. It can wipe away your memories and destroy your very identity.
Tatooine. Kashyyyk. Manaan. Korriban. Revan visited each of these worlds searching for clues to reveal the hidden location of the Starforge.
The lure of the dark side is difficult to resist. I fear this quest to find the Starforge could lead you down an all too familiar path.
What greater weapon is there than to turn an enemy to your cause, to use their own knowledge against them?
Yeah, we are Revan, once aligned with the Sith, but now, after losing our memories, have stayed with the light side. Bastila and Revan have a connection, a dyad if you will. Though this is light years ahead of the sequel trilogy, you can tell I dislike those movies by how little I reference them. Because Bastila was the one who mended Revan's mind on the ship after Malik's treachery. All along it was being told to us, through vague dialogue interactions. Most notable for me, at least, is when Karth spoke to us on Terrace, regarding mind-wiping techniques. I know for myself, on the first playthrough, this was a huge curveball, but one I really enjoyed. Someone needs to tell Ryan Johnson on how to actually subvert our expectations well. The main takeaway from the Leviathan is that we defeat the Admiral, Karth gets some relief and justice because of this, Darth Malik shows himself, revealing to the player that he was Revan all along, and lastly, Bastila sacrifices herself so that our main character and Karth can reach the Ebon Hawk. Back on the ship, things are tense. Main character reveals to Jolee, Juhani, Mission Veo, and so on that we are Revan. Once was Darth Revan. Everyone is a bit surprised at first, but after some time, they can trust that we are a better person, as our actions across the planets have been good. Karth is very skeptical, and urges everyone to reconsider, but to no avail. Revan offers some reassurances to him, saying that no matter what, we are no longer that person. Before we went to Korriban, one of the last few locations we will go to, and decided to visit the spaceport merchant located above Yavin. There really isn't much to do here, literally just trade items or sell them. I'm not sure if there's a questline associated with this, but I would be interested to know. The reason why I wanted to come here was that compared to every other merchant in the game, besides one specific one on Terrace, but you know, since that planet is destroyed, we obviously can't interact with him, is that this guy, when sold items, will give you more credits compared to others. I'm not sure the exact percentages, but is one thing that I've remembered across each playthrough. Besides selling items to get more credits, he does have some awesome loot and gear, but most are useless in this run. Medpacks in the advanced version were the most sought after. I think out of all the planets in both KOTOR games, Korriban is always a highlight for me. Korriban is the antithesis of Dantooine. What we learned with a Jedi, the Sith will teach the opposite. Similar to most planets, there is a lot to do, but I would say that there is a lot more going on here. Whether you want to learn more about Star Wars lore, do side quests, or stick to the main progression path, this planet is really awesome to go through. Revan and his allies go through the facility. As they do, they are hounded by Sith, who taunt and scold us. Progress further, a Sith medallion is needed. Whomever has one entered the Sith Academy. Because of that, I looked around for ways that I could acquire one. Fortunately, a few Sith wanted to prove themselves, provoking us.
You will die where you stand!
Yeah, I don't know what they were thinking. Because we have the Sith medallion, Yuthara Band sponsors us, so we are now able to enter the Academy. This is when things get really interesting here. Similar to being a Jedi on Dantooine, if the player wants to become a Sith, they must recite the core tenets alongside completing various tasks afterwards. First was speaking with the headmaster of the school, reciting the Sith values. Peace is a lie. There's only passion. Through passion, I gain strength. Through strength, I gain power. Through power, I gain victory. Through victory, my chains are broken. The Force shall free me. It's always really cool to do this. Once we've completed this initial trial, we are able to roam the Sith Academy and outside near the tombs. What is the purpose of doing all of this? Well, each action will yield prestige. The more prestige, the higher likelihood that we are chosen as a candidate. Whether it's taking down captive Republic soldiers to entering and conquering each of the tombs, this will grant the player prestige. The tombs are easily my favorite part of becoming a Sith. Each is unique, some have tough puzzles to beat, while others have an awesome boss to take down. Back in the academy, the headmaster thanks us for our actions. He says that we have done enough to have the opportunity to complete the final task in becoming a Sith. Once we are in the tomb of Naga Sadow, Revan is presented with his trial. Sith lightsaber rests at the very end of the tomb. We must return back here with it. This was all easier said than done, since numerous enemies and puzzles had to be conquered. I think the funniest part about this tomb is cheesing the two mini-bosses. I'll showcase it while I am talking, but yeah, they were just incapable of attacking me. I highly recommend those who struggle with this area to do this exploit. This area in the melee only run was arduous, but thankfully this cheese method helped to get past. Once we defeated them, Force Storm was unlocked, a thing of beauty. Using the ice grenade rather than the fire grenade will let the player pass the acid-flooded room. Here we are able to collect the lightsaber the headmaster mentioned, alongside finding the final star map fragment. The true test or trial is whether or not we can defeat our master, Euthura. So the headmaster taunts her and tries to force us against her. That is when it's revealed that we have teamed up together to take him down. Now the player is able to side with neither and fight them both at the same time, but it's much easier to attack them one at a time. Once the headmaster is defeated, Thara, power hungry, fights us as well, so we tell her.
There's no pleasure in saying it, but you're going nowhere.
Another battle ensues, and we are victorious. Instead of striking her down, we offer mercy to her, which she is disgusted by. I was actually really surprised that when I returned to the academy, none of the other students attacked us. My past playthroughs, I defeated the headmaster and Euthura, which caused anarchy within the school, since everyone wanted to be on top and didn't believe we struck them down. This time around, since I guess we left her alive, we weren't attacked. I probably should have reloaded a save and defeated her so I could get the extra XP, but what's done is done. In the end, with Korriban conquered, Revan and our allies returned to the Ebon Hawk. With the Starforge's location finally revealed, the team set off to defeat Darth Malak, stop the super weapon once and for all. Before this happens, the player is given a cutscene showcasing Malak, quote-unquote, torturing Bastila. I say quote-unquote because Malak likes to call it whetting her appetite to the dark side. Bro is just the definition of evil. I would highly recommend, after watching this video, the Darth Malak fan film. Honestly, it's crazy that some people can do better work than $1 billion company. As we enter the last few areas of the game, crashing on the planet below, entering the Rakatan Temple, and the Starforge itself, let's talk about the run as a whole, reflecting and analyzing past events. Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic is an awesome game to go through, especially when limiting our allies using force powers only. Early on in the run, force powers only could not be achieved. This was because the main character, who we now know as Revan, not able to be a Jedi until Dantooine, a bit after the Endar Spire and Terrace. Regardless, afterwards we went through the rest of the game with force powers only. Dantooine and the early planets, FP was a massive hindrance, forcing me to retreat often to slowly regenerate them back. Even now with a highly upgraded character, I had to be conscious of how much I had left. In the Starforge, FP was extremely hindering for our team. Enemies would frequently respawn and hit high damage numbers. In these situations, I would have to retreat, making sure to get hit extremely little. In some cases, I had to do the zombie training method once again. Thankfully, in the second KOTOR game, the devs understood how slow FP regen was, gave the player ample choices to enhance how quickly it comes back. Force powers such as Force Storm worked excellent at taking down groups of enemies, and then for single opponents, Choke was decent as it cost fewer FP and had similar damage. Buffs for teammates and debuffing enemies I found to be very useful, but were really for specific situations. Mostly if an enemy was force resistant, or I just want to get extra damage in. That and upgrade choices, like in every game, are extremely important. Allocating levels to useless stats, dexterity, or strength in this specific run would only make things more challenging in the worst possible way. Thankfully, sticking with the 4 original attributes I mentioned, Constitution, Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma, has made her damage high enough to take down most enemies. While I did give myself an exception to using armor in this challenge, it hasn't been that helpful, since Jedi and Sith robes have at max like 2 to 3 defense, so it will block some damage, but not that much. Using no implants, visors, gauntlets, shields, and belt modifiers has made things much tougher. With our party members having none of these, it means less damage dealt to enemies and more damage dealt towards us, especially since we were using no shields. Our difficulties in games are no joke, but especially in the KOTOR games. As long as the player is fairly optimal in their actions, stat upgrades, and credits, it is more than doable. But with force powers only, it made the challenging much more demanding than before. I think overall, looking at this challenge from a top-down view, it's been straightforward in most sections, but there were also plenty of tough moments. FP regen was always an issue, often making me slow down and wait before each encounter. On the flip side, when our party members had full FP, there were almost no enemies that stood a chance. I would say that force powers only are much easier than blasters only, but slightly harder than melee only, since you have to be conscious about FP, party members like Jolie having the health of a wet paper towel, and so on. I'd be interested to know down below your thoughts on this. Final thing we will do in KOTOR and the challenge as a whole, bringing Bastila back to the light, taking down Darth Malak. Bastila was the toughest, since her fight was 3 phases back to back. It was awesome to turn her back to the light, making her aid the Republic with her battle meditation, and for her to to eventually show affection for Revan. Malak, on the other hand, was a whole nother beast. I'm sure by now you might have noticed that we have acquired Revan's Jedi Knight robes. These are able to be printed by the Starforge itself. One thing that I'm unsure of is how to get his dark-sided version, so let me know down below if you have any information. Regardless, this Jedi Knight robe massively enhances Revan's stats, making him an absolute titan. One thing that made this fight extremely challenging in past playthroughs was that I had to deal with an 8-phase Malak boss fight. Basically, whenever he was low on health, he would siphon it from the Jedi. That was fun, but extremely tough. This time around, with Force powers, we were able to bypass a lot of that and able to destroy the Jedi before they can be siphoned. I remember reading a while back a way to get light-sided points from them, but I wasn't able to find information on this again. No matter, since in the end, Malak falls like the Starforge itself. This has been Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, Force powers only, well, for the most part. Endar Spire and Terrace proved that part of the game could not be completed with only them. And even then, once we acquired Force powers, situations like on the Leviathan were brutal. Force powers overall are solid choices to use, whether it's to buff yourself or damage enemies. Each is solid in their own right. About half of the roster we were unable to use. HK-47, Karth, Canderous, and so on. I guess they just didn't have enough midichlorians, and so we weren't able to put them in our squad often. The light and dark side endings for this game both go so hard, but it's nice to get the good ending, celebrating saving the galaxy with friends and allies. This is one reason I greatly enjoy this game compared to the second, as each ending is really satisfying, leaves things open for the player to interpret future events. Really enjoy doing KOTOR challenge runs, making/editing the videos, and releasing it to entertain you guys. One thing that you might have noticed is that these videos are usually longer than my others. I'll showcase on screen while I'm talking about this, but on average I would say that these KOTOR videos are about 20 pages per challenge. I really give my all making sure to give you guys an awesome and funny video. Before a KOTOR video, I've made it a tradition to watch at least one movie and one Star Wars TV show. This has helped me to find meme material to insert alongside just, getting myself hyped to write the script. In the future, I would like to do a Q&A video answering some of your guys' questions, and so, comment some questions you guys might have below. Originally, I was going to rush to get this video for May the 4th, so that is why I had a mystery surprise for the Star Wars Marathon. Instead, I want to give myself extra time for the script, editing, thumbnails, etc. I always want to give my best, and so I hope you guys can understand. In a few weeks, I'll be going through KOTOR with fists only, which will be interesting to say the least. Afterwards, I was debating on what challenge I should do next. Grenade/mines only, no deaths. There are just so many options to choose from. Thank you for watching. Make sure to hit the like button, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. It genuinely helps to support the channel and push the video to others who might enjoy it. Try to do something kind for someone today, whether it's a small or large gesture. This is your boy Skilled Fawn, and I'm out.